Keanu Reeves, known for his kindness and humility, recently made headlines for an unplanned visit to a local charity orphanage. While many know him as a Hollywood star, few get to witness the quiet, compassionate side of this beloved actor. That day, Keanu's arrival wasn't announced or part of any grand event. It was just him, walking through the gates with a warm smile and a heart full of curiosity. The children gathered around him, their faces lighting up with joy, while the staff shared stories of their challenges and dreams. But as Keanu listened, he noticed something unusual. It wasn't just the lack of resources or the struggles the orphanage faced. There was something deeper, something that needed urgent attention. Without hesitation, Keanu's demeanor shifted. He asked questions, dug deeper, and connected with the people around him in a way that only someone truly invested in helping could. What he discovered left him determined to take immediate action. But what was it that caught his attention so deeply? And how would he make a difference in the lives of these children? Stay tuned as we uncover the heartfelt story of Keanu Reeves and the powerful steps he took to bring hope to this orphanage. As Keanu walked through the orphanage, he couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. The children were full of smiles and laughter, but there was a quiet sadness in their eyes, something that spoke of struggles far deeper than anyone had shared. The staff did their best to keep spirits high, but Keanu noticed the worn-out supplies, the peeling paint on the walls, and the frayed edges of the children's clothing. He paused to talk with Maria, a dedicated staff member who had worked there for over a decade. She explained how hard it was to keep the orphanage running, especially with limited donations and growing needs. Still, there was pride in her voice as she described the resilience of the children and their dreams for the future. But then, as they continued their conversation, Keanu's sharp eye caught a file sitting on Maria's desk. It was thick, filled with papers that looked like reports or letters. Maria hesitated when Keanu asked about it, her face shadowed with concern. "It's complicated," she said softly, clearly unsure how much to share. What could be so sensitive that even Maria struggled to explain it? Keanu knew he had to find out, and fast. Something bigger was at play. Keanu couldn't shake the uneasy feeling as he glanced at the file Maria seemed reluctant to discuss. He didn't push her in that moment, but decided to spend more time with the children to understand their world better. As he played games and listened to their stories, he noticed patterns, small but telling details. Some of the children seemed hesitant to talk about their past, while others mentioned dreams that felt painfully out of reach. Later, Keanu sat with David, a 12-year-old boy with bright eyes and a shy smile. David shared how much he loved reading, but the orphanage's library was almost empty, with most books tattered and outdated. "Sometimes I write my own stories," David said, holding up a notebook with pages barely clinging to the spine. His words were hopeful, but Keanu could sense the struggles hidden beneath them. That night, after the children had gone to bed, Keanu found himself in the quiet office with Maria again. This time, he gently pressed about the file. Maria finally opened up, explaining that it contained reports of delays in crucial funding and unfulfilled promises from organizations the orphanage relied on. "We're doing our best," Maria said, her voice breaking slightly, "but we're barely keeping things together." Keanu realized the depth of the challenges they faced went beyond what he initially thought. Something about the way resources weren't arriving didn't sit right with him. He started piecing things together, but the more he learned, the more questions he had. What had caused these delays? And why did it feel like someone, somewhere, wasn't telling the whole truth Keanu couldn't let it go? That night, as he lay awake in his small guest room at the orphanage, the pieces of the puzzle swirled in his mind. The worn-down facilities, the missing funding, the hesitation in Maria's voice. It all pointed to something much bigger. He decided he needed answers, even if it meant stepping out of his comfort zone. The next morning, he asked Maria for the contact information of the organizations responsible for supporting the orphanage. Maria was hesitant, but eventually handed over a list of names. "I don't know if they'll even respond," she said, her tone heavy with frustration. Keanu, however, wasn't one to wait passively. He made calls, sent emails, and dug deeper into the history of the orphanage's funding. What he uncovered sent a chill down his spine. Some of the promised donations had never arrived, not because of neglect, but because they had been intercepted. She was stunned, and together they realized the issue wasn't just financial, it was personal. The children's futures were being stolen by someone they had trusted. Now the question burned in Keanu's mind. Who was behind this betrayal, and how far had it gone? With time running out and the orphanage's survival at stake, he knew the next steps would be critical. This wasn't just about uncovering the truth. It was about stopping the damage before it was too late. As Keanu and Maria dove deeper into the documents, they realized the issue wasn't confined to missing donations. There were patterns, timelines that didn't match in reports of shipments that never arrived. It became clear that someone inside the network meant to support the orphanage was manipulating the system. The thought was heartbreaking. How could anyone take advantage of vulnerable children in such a way? But just as they thought they had a lead, another piece of the puzzle emerged. A staff member, James, who had worked at the orphanage for years, unexpectedly resigned the day after Keanu began asking questions. Maria was shocked. James had always been quiet but reliable. Why would he leave so suddenly? She wondered aloud, her voice trembling. Keanu's instincts kicked in. He suggested they check the inventory logs and cross-reference them with James's responsibilities. What they found was startling. Supplies under James's supervision, food, clothing, even small amounts of cash donations, had been marked as delivered but were missing from the orphanage. It wasn't just about mismanagement anymore. It pointed to delivery theft. As the pieces fell into place, Keanu and Maria faced a new challenge. If James was involved, was he acting alone? And more importantly, where had the stolen resources gone? The stakes had never been higher, and with the children's well-being hanging in the balance, they knew they had to act quickly before the trail went cold. Keanu and Maria worked through the night, gathering evidence and piecing together what they could about James's activities. Early the next morning, they contacted local authorities, sharing their findings. The police began their investigation, but Keanu couldn't sit back and wait. He used his platform to quietly reach out to trusted contacts who could help speed things along. A breakthrough came when the authorities traced some of the missing donations to a warehouse on the outskirts of the city. Keanu and Maria joined the officers as they raided the location. Inside, they found stacks of supplies meant for the orphanage, boxes of food, clothing, and even educational materials that had never made it to the children. It was a bittersweet moment, knowing how much had been taken, but it was also a turning point. Just as they thought the case was closed, another twist emerged. The investigation revealed that James hadn't acted alone. He was part of a larger scheme involving a few individuals from one of the donor organizations. They had been exploiting several charities, funneling resources for their own profit. The revelation was shocking, but it strengthened Keanu's resolve to see justice done. With the stolen goods recovered and the culprits exposed, Keanu didn't stop there. He rallied his connections to ensure the orphanage received not just what was taken, but ongoing support. And as the children's smiles returned and hope was restored, Keanu reflected on how a single visit had uncovered so much, and how taking action had made all the difference. With the truth exposed and the stolen supplies returned, life at the orphanage began to change for the better. Maria could finally breathe a sigh of relief, knowing the children would have the resources they deserved. Kinu's quiet determination had sparked something extraordinary. Not just the resolution of a crisis, but a wave of kindness and support from others inspired by his actions. Keanu didn't stop with uncovering the scheme. He worked with his contacts to ensure the orphanage received steady donations, not just from large organizations, but from individuals who cared deeply about making a difference. He even helped fund renovations to the building, transforming it into a bright, welcoming space where the children could truly thrive. One afternoon, as he was getting ready to leave, David approached him with his notebook. "I wrote this one for you," he said shyly, handing Keanu a short story about a hero who stood up for those who couldn't fight for themselves. Keanu smiled, deeply touched. As he drove away, Keanu reflected on how this experience reminded him of the power of compassion and action. Sometimes a single visit, a single choice to care, could create ripples that changed lives forever.